Good morning, everyone. It's February 2nd, 9 o'clock, and we'll open the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors meeting. At this time, we'll have Tim Sackett from the Transport for Christ at Hudson will give us our invocation. So everybody stand, please.
This is already on, right? Oh, there we go. So I'm glad everybody made it here today, and I hope you're out of here in time to get home safely. And I hope we don't repeat this day, kind of like Groundhog's Day, if you know that movie. Nobody wants to repeat this daily, do you? But on a more serious note, you know, a lot of times as pastors we come and we pray, and we give inspiration about things that sometimes seem quite lofty. Like we can just say we pray for wisdom. And wisdom is a lofty thing, but everyone needs it. So today I'd like to pray for the things that are quite lofty and the things that are more down to earth. So let's go to God in prayer. Lord, for this gathering today, we find that inspiration and encouragement from you is extremely important. And as I think about praying for the grand and lofty things like wisdom, Lord, I also pray for the people here today for things that are a lot more usable and reasonable for them. I just pray for the efficiency of this meeting and for the clarity of this meeting and for the patience of this meeting. And we just pray for all of the things that they have on the agenda today, that there are clear and precise discussions, that there are patient and calm discussions, and that there are efficient and precise discussions to be able to have them out of here today. A lot of us know about the storms that are coming. I want to pray especially for Tim Ramberg's people out here on the highways today, and just keep everyone safe as they're all traveling. So whether it's the schools or the snow plows or just everybody in general, we just pray for a safe day when the roads get bad today. But we just pray that your presence would be with the people in this meeting today. We ask this in Jesus' great name. Amen.
Everybody join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Cindy, are we ready for roll call? Supervisor Octoff, can you? We have everybody present except one supervisor is absent today. Thank you. At this time, we have open for public comment, anything on or off the agenda. If anybody has anything for public comment. We're open for public comment at this time. Anybody think from on or off the agenda?
My name is Ken House. I'm the quartermaster for VFW Post 10818 in Richmond, Wisconsin. The last time we were here, I was asked a question about how much money went from our car donation program into the unmet needs program, and I didn't have the data. Now I do. The car program last year brought us in $8,610, and that was in its infancy. We gave out $13,125 to unmet needs programs for veterans and their families in St. Croix County. That was 66% of the money that we gave out, and we wanted to thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like to commend the efforts of this group. Thank you for your service.
I'll ask again now, do we have anybody else from the public that wants to talk on the agenda? If not, we'll move forward then with our meeting. Thank you. We have the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Supervisor Novotny. I need a second. Supervisor Ring, second. Any discussion on the consent agenda? When we approve this, we also approve that amendment to the compensation zoning ordinance to town of Springfield flickering. So that's part of this. Just so everybody's aware of that. If there's no discussion, we'll vote on this consent agenda then. Supervisor Ring. It's all yeses. Thank you. We have no presentations or recognitions today, no appointments, no annual reports. County Administrator's report then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, in your packet, you have the financial reports through the end of December 2015. This is preliminary year-end, unaudited numbers. There's still transactions being made back and forth in the finance department, but for the most part, it reflects preliminary year-end activity through the various departments. So if you look at our general fund budgeted expenditures in 2015 of 26.1 million, actual expenditures 25.1. So we're under in terms of budgeted expenditures almost $1 million, but like I said, that's preliminary. There are a couple departments that are either at or slightly above budgeted levels. These are not really surprises or shouldn't be. We will try to address any of those issues through budgeting for next year, for 2017. If you look at overall grand total expenses budgeted of 84.8 million, that's all funds, and expenditures coming in at 79 million. So we're under, but there are some transfers in and out still taking place. If you see the one line item, miscellaneous expenditures, at the very bottom of the expenditure page, miscellaneous of 3.1 million. There's still some transfers in and out being made, mostly for capital improvement projects. So we'll have a more final year-end financial report for you in your next month packet. If you turn to revenues, total budgeted revenues of 4.3 million. We're slightly under, came in at a little over 4 million. That's general fund revenues. And if you look at the total revenues at the bottom, 84.8, we came in at 84.8. So we're right on in terms of revenues, which is good. So we're under in expenditures, at least at this point, and right on target with revenues. So I think preliminary year-end looks good, Mr. Chairman. I'd take any questions from the board, or if Bob Middett has anything else to say.
Questions at this time? Thank you for that report.
Yep. There's one other item. I was going to do this under announcements, but I'll do it now so I don't forget. But at your workstation, you should have a letter addressed actually to me from Bill Rubin. It's provides information on the Economic Development Corporation annual awards banquet. We do have some seats. Bill Rubin reserves some seats for, I think, up to 8 or 9. I can't remember exactly, board members. So if you are interested in attending the annual awards banquet for the Economic Development Corporation, it's a very nice event. and it recognizes large and small business businessmen, businesswomen throughout the St. Croix County area. So it's being held at the Kilcarney Golf Course. And the information's provided there. If you are interested in attending, contact me, and I will make sure you have a reserved seat at the banquet. It's a nice event. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any questions on that? If there are no questions, we'll move forward. We're going to move into the business items today. And at this time, I'd like to move, if it's all right with the board, 8 and 9 up to 1 and 2. If there's no objection, we'll move those forward, and we'll start with resolution number 8. I don't see any opposition, so we'll move that forward. Number 8 is a resolution awarding the sale of a $10 million general obligation health center bond, Series 2016A, providing form for the bond and levying the tax connection there within. I need a motion to approve, so done by Supervisor Schottner, and second by Supervisor Berkey. It's open for discussion.
This is basically it's the resolution to complete the work that we started last year. So it's the other 10 million to complete that. Everybody should have one of these yellow packets that highlights basically everything in it. We're looking at the Nicholas and Company Incorporated as the person to be awarding, if I remember correctly, and that's the best rate coming in. We're actually nearly saving nearly $1 million due to the projections to where we're at now. Overall, we'll be saving about $1 million. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce Joe Murray from Springstead Incorporated, who is our financial advisor, and he'll walk us through the process that he followed, and then he'll take any questions from the board before you take action. Welcome back, Joe.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Joe Murray from Springstead, proud to be the county's financial advisor. As we discussed at the admin committee before this meeting, this is the second half of the borrowing for the healthcare center. You approved the financing plan last spring. We did the first $10 million of borrowing to start construction last fall. This is the second $10 million to finish up the project. As part of the debt issuance process, we did go through the credit rating process once again. I'm pleased to report to you that your AA1 credit rating was affirmed by Moody's. That's the second highest rating that's possible. Only a AAA is higher, and there's only 5 Wisconsin AAA rated counties that have higher ratings than you do. Your rating is based on your strong economic and employment opportunities and proximity to the Twin Cities, as well as your strong finances at the county, your average debt burden, as well as strong population growth, and your property values are rebounding, as you've seen, and your equalized value in 2015. So all that was reflected by the rating agency and your AA1 rating, so congratulations on that. That also played into the good bids that we did take on your behalf yesterday. We did receive 7 bids. The low bid came in with a true interest cost of 2.3144% from Stiefel Nicholas and Company Incorporated. It is in the yellow handout that is in your places. That is roughly 37 basis points below what we had projected that it was going to come in at. So based just on the 2016 issue and these bids, that is almost $615,000 in interest costs below what we had projected this issue was going to cost. I'm also pleased that there is strong competition. 3 of the bids were within 10 basis points, and even the highest bid, the 7th ranked bid, came in below what we had projected. So they were all very competitive, and that is also very good news. The best news, I think, as was highlighted, when I presented this to the board back, I believe it was in May of last year when we discussed the overall financing plan, we had projected that to borrow $20 million for the new healthcare center, the total interest cost, the total principal and interest cost was going to be just over $27 million. That was the $20 million in principal plus the 20 years worth of interest on both borrowings. Based on the actual bids we received on the 2015A and the bids that for today, that actual total principal and interest cost is coming in at just under $26,300,000. The result is you're saving roughly $750,000 from what we had projected and when you approved the overall financing plan back in May of 2015. That also then relates into what is the tax impact. After factoring in the projected $450,000 a year of new revenue from the the healthcare center when it is up and running, that was to generate about $8.1 million in revenue, so that the tax impact that was going to be spread on the levy over the next 20 years for the healthcare center, back in April of last year, we had expected it to be roughly $19 million. Based on the actual bids, it's now coming in at $18,200,000. Again, saving about $750,000 from where you were. If you recall, when I presented the overall plan, I indicated to you that the total tax impact we had projected was going to be roughly $250 per $100,000 of equalized value. That was total principal and interest over the next 20 years in support of the new healthcare center and the debt being issued. Based on the bids and the lower interest cost, that's now dropped to $240 per $100,000. Again, that's total principal and interest over the next 20 years. When we factor in how your equalized value went up by over $300 million this year, that tax impact drops down to $230. So as the your equalized value continues to increase, which is expected in the county as you continue to grow, the overall tax impact will continue to drop as you move forward. If the income and revenues generated by the new healthcare center when it's up and running also generates more than the $450,000 a year that we projected, that also reduces the tax impact all the way through. So the bids were very positive. I think the news is positive overall. We recommend that you award the sale of the 2016A health center bonds to Stiefel Nicholas and Company at a true interest cost of 2.3114%. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Supervisor Ring.
On your sources and uses, can you tell me what is the reoffering premium?
The reoffering premium is the money that is being offered, that is being paid in over the $10 million face value of the bonds. The underwriter in this case found it easier to sell the bonds, and based on the size, they all did. They all bid it with a premium. So what they do, the underwriter puts a higher coupon or interest rate on the bonds to make it easier for them to sell. Obviously, the interest of the county is to get the lowest interest rate possible. So in return for them getting a higher interest rate so they can sell it to their investors, they give you money back to lower down your net interest cost to help make it easier for them to sell, to put it back within the market condition. So the reoffering premium of the $183,000 reflects not only the extra money they gave the county. If you go down under the uses, you'll see $81,000.
Right.
They gave the county $81,000 to help reduce the interest cost. The extra $100,000, $102,000 is their compensation that they get by selling it in the market with a higher interest rate. It has based on the coupon and the yield,
Okay.
it's easier to sell a bond with a 3% interest rate on it as opposed to a 0.6% interest rate. So that gets paid more money, and that's reflected in that increased money.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Supervisor Hanson.
Concerning early payment, I'm not understanding the and I don't know that it's going to be a factor, but I'm not understanding the process for that optional redemption. Do we pay a penalty for that? Or is, if we get to the point where we want to pay it off a little early, how does that work?
We have a 10-year call provision on these. So for the next 10 years, the investors will get to hold that investment. They are guaranteed that payment for the next 10 years. On a 20-year bond, no, there is not a penalty for that. If we were to have a shorter call provision on it, then you would have paid a penalty because there's more of a risk. But on a 20-year bond, the industry standard is 10 is fair, and the investors assume that. So what, for the next 10 years, you are obligated to make the payments, is it, without anything happening, unless we were to do an advance refunding if interest rates were to drop. With all indications, our rates are going to continue to increase, but it's possible that we have been in a low now for quite some time, and we've done a lot of refundings across the country. But you have a 10-year call provision in there. You did not pay a penalty for that.
Supervisor Schoberg.
Well, earlier you heard our pastor pray for wisdom and precision decision-making here. And I think we have to recognize some wisdom going on in this county supervisory board, as well as our finance director, the people that we retain, such as yourself, Joe, and Supervisor Ring's comment, let's look for some other sources. I mean, to now announce to the public that we're saving $750,000 in interest is truly amazing. I think we're all blessed. I think we've all just been graced. And again, I thank the Lord for this delivery of this good news, and for your wisdom too, Joe. Thank you
very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Any other discussion? If there is none, we'll vote on this resolution at this time. And that was all yeses. Thank you. That was good. Appreciate that. We're moving forward. We'll go to resolution number 9, which is approving application for a state trust fund loan in the amount of $5 million. I need Supervisor Schottner. Do I have a second? Supervisor Ring, second. And now it's open for discussion. Supervisor Brinkman.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose an amendment to this agreement. This may be lengthy, so I apologize. Instead of borrowing $5 million from the state trust fund, I would like to borrow an amount of $3,707,099. How I arrive at that $3,707,099 is by doing this. Including in this would be the ESS Phase 2 at $2.2 million, the Day Report Center at $240,000, the Sheriff's Jail upgrade at $1.1 million, the Sheriff's Forensic Computer at $7,500, and the Clerk of Court video conferencing at $68,530. That leaves us with a total amount of $3,757,099. From that, I would like to see us take $50,000 from the jail write-down account, providing us with $3,707,099. From the get-go, the constituents I've talked to is the $5 million is a lot of money. And on top of that, we just borrowed $20 million already. What I would like to see us do with this is turn this into a public protection loan. All the things that are in it are for public protection. How does this break down? And I've ran the numbers. I met with Bob Minnett last Friday. Bob, thanks for sitting down with me. He probably fell asleep. He was so bored listening to me talk. anyways, if we borrow $5 million at 10 years at 3.25 interest, we would accumulate over that 10 years $1,037,342.80 in interest. And you guys, I promise you, I didn't do this on an amortizeme.com site. I actually have the software at work to do this legitimately, and I did it. And I've been working on this for 2 weeks trying to figure out how to do this. If we take it down to the 3.7 million that I'd like to see us get, we take the interest down to $769,000. That, as the supervisor from District 5 just said, is a godsend savings of $268,235 to us, the taxpayers of this county. What do we do with the other 1.2 million, almost 1.3 million dollars? It would be my hope that we could take that out of the remaining fund balance. Per Bob Middett, our estimated unassigned fund balance as of 12/31/15 is $16,150,000. That's 44.1%. If we take the $1,292,901, that fully takes us to the $5 million mark out of fund balance. We drop our fund balance to $14,857,000. That's still 40.6, well above our 35% threshold that this board has asked that we stay above, which is $12 million according to Bob Middett. I ask for people's support in this because it saves the taxpayers of this county over 10 years, $268,235 that we can use for other projects.
I'd like to second the motion.
And maybe he should have did that before I just went on that rant. I'm sorry.
We have an amendment, motion and a second on the floor. We're open for discussion.
First of all, I'd like to, did you say hi, Mr. Chair? Okay.
Hanson.
I'd like to thank Supervisor Brinkman for his leadership on this. The ability for us to save another $268,000 in interest is an amazing opportunity when we're looking for ways to be wise and responsible with our taxpayers' money. This just makes sense when we're already holding the funds to do this. So I support this fully.
Supervisor Peavy.
And I want to echo the same sentiments. Thank you, Supervisor Brinkman. I got my notes next to me right here. My numbers followed exactly Supervisor Brinkman's numbers, right to the dollar. So I appreciate him making the motion. I was ready to make the same motion. So I heartily support this amendment. Thank you.
Any other Supervisor Berkey?
I asked for clarification, and maybe it would be from either Pat or Bob, our finance director. Wasn't there some caveat with this state trust fund loan that we make the application and we can't make any modifications? That's one of my questions. And then my other question is, or my concern is that we have some anticipated changes that are very significant with respect to our extension programs. These folks work at the Ag Extension Office in Baldwin. There'll be some changes there's still some discussion that can happen, but in July, there's going to be some significant changes and requests by the state that we basically spread our range of services to 3 counties versus just our St. Croix County. And I'm anticipating that there may be some additional costs that we need to sustain those services. So I am concerned about reducing that fund balance that significant. I like the idea in concept, but with this other matter at hand, I do have some serious concerns. That's my 2 cents.
Supervisor Brinkman.
That is one of the questions. Your first question is one of the ones I did bring up to Bob Middett on Friday. And he said yes, that this is for 5 million. They can reapply, and it should take within 2 weeks, we would have the approval. Because the way the state does it is they send us the completed forms. So he said it would probably take 2 weeks to have that. In terms of what you're talking about extension and things like that, I think that there's a lot of changes like that coming from the state. And I don't think they're going to be all beneficial to this county. And I think that is a reason we need to limit our borrowing at this time, because there are going to be ongoing costs, and this is a way we can save money.
Supervisor Peterson?
Just for the record, I'd like to hear Mr. Middet's comments, or thoughts on this, please.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Any other questions? So, Bob, do you have some information you want to add?
I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Yep.
Questions were about the whole reapplying, no, package, the whole package. Andy said you talked it over. Well, we have talked, we did talk. The way this loan is structured, they prepare the resolution and it's prepared for $5 million. If we, there's a couple of ways we can approach it. So if we're going to reduce it, we just don't have to draw on the whole amount. You know, part of the application that would be submitted following this meeting would be to indicate when over the next 4 months we would anticipate needing the cash. And if we don't request all $5 million, we will not have borrowed it. Now, we could, if, and this is what Supervisor Brinkman's referring to, we could start the process all over, and which would involve going back to the State Trust Fund with a new preliminary application. They would prepare a new resolution for a reduced amount. But we just get back to where we're at again, we'd have a new resolution that would need new approval. Because the only resolution that you have before you today is for $5 million. So we can either affect the drawdown of it, or we start over.
Supervisor Clark?
Yeah, I have a question about the term of the loan. Are we able to prepay the loan without penalty, or is there a?
Yes, it can be prepaid. Penalty, only at certain periods during the year. Actually, I think there's about a 2-month period where you are not allowed to prepay.
Supervisor Ring?
So we locked in a rate. Do you know if that rate would go up if we start over?
It could, yes. The rate lock is good for 2 months, and their board meets on the 16th of February, and they meet on the first and third Tuesdays of each month. And I believe that we started this process on December 30th. So if we don't have it wrapped up by February 28th, the rate lock would end and we'd start over.
Supervisor
And we
Scott?
benefited, did we not, from the Fed had increased their rates, and this, as I understand it, happened, they did not include that. So it's likely that there's be a rate increase if we start over? Or you don't want to say that? You don't.
No, I don't know that. Depending on the amount of the loan too, that affects the rate that they charge. And I don't have that information in front of me, but that could affect it.
So I also have a question about, I'm concerned about the reserve. I mean, our Moody's rating was highly influenced by the amount that we have in reserve. And if you have an opinion on that, I'd like to hear that. And maybe as long as Mr. Murray is still here, if maybe we could get an opinion on that. I would appreciate that as well.
Yeah, actually, Joe and I were talking about that between meetings, and I think we both agree, I probably shouldn't speak for Joe, but that Moody's is going to look at that, at the use of reserve in the context of how controlled it is. I think that if we spend that down to the level that we have in our fund balance policy, if we do it in a, I'd characterize it as maybe as baby steps, that they'll be fine with that. I don't know, agree, Joe? If we decide that we're going to take on the rest of these capital improvement project items and pay for them all this year out of the fund balance, we could do that, except that I think we run the risk that Moody's is going to come back and say, well, you've got continuing capital improvement needs going forward. How do you plan on paying for those? Because this reserve is only going to be good for a certain period of time. That's my concern, and I think that would be Moody's concern as well.
Supervisor Schottner?
How, with the current situation, how easy is it to replenish those funds for us?
I think it's probably quite difficult. As we've talked about with the levy limit laws being what they are, our ability to increase our levy is very constrained. And what we've also done with the 2016 budget was to budget in sales tax revenue more aggressively than what has been done in the past. So for instance, the 2014, when we ended 2014, we had increased our unassigned fund balance by about 1.2 million. Half of that was just the unbudgeted sales tax revenue that came in. We're not going to have 600,000 coming in from sales tax revenue in excess of budget going forward. I would expect that we might have 150,000, but we won't have 600,000. So that's one, that would be one consideration. Part of that 1.2 million increase in 2014 was we didn't use any of the contingency fund. Now, in 2015, we did use some of it, so that's that much less again that's going to be going into unassigned fund balance. So there are different factors that are going to impact that, and so the short answer is yes, it's going to be difficult to replenish the unassigned fund balance should we need to, and that's why I think that we need to look at spending it down, but I would urge caution in how quickly we do so.
Supervisor Schottner?
I would, in light of that, we've spent since I've been on the board, so it's only been 4 years, but for the last 4 years, even the small items that we would bring up to go after the general funds were shot down. And now we're saying we're gonna use the unassigned funds for over $1 million. I think that a smarter move is going forward with how it's laid out now than going after those unassigned funds. That's the fiscal discipline that we have had to get us where we're at now with our rating, and I don't want to see that needs to be guarded more than anything. So that way we can move forward with a strong rating.
Supervisor Peterson?
I had some, maybe some questions or reservations when Andy, or Supervisor Brinkman brought up the proposal. On that fund balance, having been on Finance Committee before, I know that 35% was our ideal or benchmark, so to speak. We're well above it, and it is taxpayer money. So I fully support Mr. Brinkman and that we should bring it down that much. From what I'm hearing, we're not going to jeopardize our bond rating with this move, so I fully support it. Thank you.
Supervisor Nelson?
I think that gets us to the point where I've asked before is about prioritizing what's important as far as the CIP, capital improvement plan. Now we're gonna go after the basic meat and potatoes that has been taken care of for years. And at 43%, as Supervisor Pearson says, it's the taxpayers' money. It's not a big old nest egg. It's to make sure we take care of the infrastructure of this county. And we're mandated to have a 911 system, things like that. I would actually support that because it makes sense. Now, after we do the 3.7 million, basically what they're saying is it's a credit card, but we don't have to use all the money and you don't get penalized. So that's due diligence on our part to make sure that we're money wise. And I think it's up to us as a board too to make sure that the administrator, whoever else is dealing with what the capital improvement plans is, what's the county's priority, because we speak for the county. And it's very important to do that. I'd support Mr. Brinkman's idea because I think it makes a lot of sense.
Supervisor Brinkman, or Berkey?
While I appreciate the work that the Public Protection has done and Supervisor Brinkman, I also think that that proposal shortchanges other projects that are necessary, whether it be in community development for some long, we do not have flush toilets or appropriate changing stations in all these many years at our park over by Glenwood City. That's just one of the projects. I'm hearing that we need to take care of public protection needs. And believe me, we have been. We sold property up by New Richmond. A lot of that proceeds went to changes in the phase 1 of the ESS, emergency services. I studied this a lot, and I was cautious and asked a lot of questions. I think that our administration committee actually did a heck of a lot of work on this. I think that between Mr. Middick and Mr. Thompson, there were some changes in reducing some of the costs out of KIP, and I have the assurance from them if they need to also make some further modifications that would happen. So therefore, I don't support the amendment. I would like to support the resolution as it was presented, lock in that rate. It's much better than going out to bonding, and I feel good about that. And I thank Supervisor Ring for asking our county staff to look into that. Thank you.
Supervisor Kiesler.
Just in response to that, Mr. Chairman, I don't believe that it does shortchange anything. As Supervisor Brinkman outlined, there are the funds. They're just in a general fund. What I've taken away from the discussion from Mr. Middick, and I appreciate your discussion on that, is that we will have to scrutinize the KIP plan. And I've been saying for quite some time on the admin committee that we need to scrutinize the KIP plan. I think there are a number of things in there that are more of a wish list, not a mission critical like the items that have been outlined by Supervisor Brinkman. The things that he has outlined are things that we have, for the most part, begun and we need to finish. What the other things that are on there can be done, they can't be done. I think we need to prioritize, and for me, that's the issue, is utilizing taxpayer funds. We need to very closely scrutinize the KIP plan. And again, in terms of saving dollars, we're saving over $250,000 in interest by doing this. So I would be in support of it, which is why I seconded the motion.
I'll come back. Supervisor Schoberg.
I like borrowing less money and using some of our general funds. I don't like looking a gift horse in the mouth and having to start this over and have the possibility of the rate increasing. So perhaps we could stay with the spirit of your limited borrowing and all agree that the drawdown against the 5 million will not exceed 3.7. That way, the borrowing is limited, we get the immediate approval of the funds, and we can tap into the general fund accordingly. So unless you think we're going to change our minds down the road, I think that perhaps could be a nice solution, and I'd like to have Supervisor Brinkman respond to that.
Supervisor Schopner?
Just to clarify processes, okay? So the way you, from my understanding, in all actuality, in order to move forward with the amendment, the actual right process would be to, not to amend this, but to vote against the full resolution and come up with, and then reapply to get the proper resolution from the state, right? So if we're to move forward, we can't, the amount that we're according to this resolution, we're pulling out, we're asking for a loan of $5 million. We can't change that resolution as it was written, correct?
That's correct, yes.
So in order, the proper process would not be to amend the resolution to say 3.7. It would be to vote down the resolution and then restart the process over.
I think what would be the most...
I'm just trying to hold us to the current amendment. We can't do that.
I think that what we need to do, or what you need to do, is to approve the resolution as it's presented before you. Now, if you instructed staff not to spend more than 3.7 million, we're not going to spend more than 3.7.
Mm-hmm.
And that will be all that we will put on any drawdown request that goes to the state trust fund. So I think you can approve the resolution authorizing 5 million with good faith that we won't spend more than what you want us to spend.
Okay, so no, I'm just trying to, because we're still in the amendment portion, we can't, I'm just trying to make that clear that the amendment itself can't, as a process, we can't amend this resolution.
I'll go back to Supervisor Brinkman.
This needs to be voted down.
Supervisor Schoberg, in response to your question, we are 60 days away from having a new board. And that board could feel differently. And they could all of a sudden say, no, let's take the drawdown. I'm trying to protect the taxpayers of this county. That's purely what I'm trying to do with this. I'm also want to point out, I'm not cutting it in any way. The other projects that are there, I simply want to use fund balance for. Simple.
Supervisor Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. Just going the next step with that, it's important to note that this amendment, it doesn't cut any projects. The showers will be put in at Glen Hills. Now, if conversely, we just limit the drawdown, then what we're doing is we have to eliminate projects like the shower at Glen Hills, because then we're limiting the amount of money that we'll spend. This amendment allows for $5 million expenditure. Constraining the expenditure will affect the capital improvements that we need to make. This is simply saving interest money on how we utilize the money that the county already has.
Supervisor Schoberg.
I respectfully disagree with your understanding of what is going on here. If we constrain the drawdown to 3.7 million, that's constraining the loan. It has nothing to do with whether or not we use our fund balance to pay the remaining items. So it's not going to do what you just said.
And further, it reduces the time if we have to come back to committee and redo this and reapply, then we may be a month or two down the road with the state trust fund. I'm concerned about that as well.
Supervisor Osmus.
Bob, if we go back and reapply to the state trust fund for the 3.7 million, what's the turnaround in having another resolution come back to this board? I'm sure it would be way past our March meeting, correct? That's the fear that I've got, if we've got to go back to do it that way, that it may put the whole ball of works on the next incoming board and not this particular board.
We could, at this point, we could possibly get that preliminary application back to the state trust fund in time to get something perhaps for the February admin committee meeting. Probably March, though.
But didn't you say that committee met on the third Thursday of a month? First and third Thursday, or Tuesday?
Their committee would meet on the third Tuesday, the 16th of February, to consider this application. Now, if we start all over, then we send a preliminary application back to the state trust fund and indicate that this is how much we're interested in borrowing, and then they would prepare a new resolution for that reduced amount, and that would get mailed back to us. And we have to act on this document that they prepare. They can't email it to us. It's got to be done through the mail. And so that's where I think we would probably find the delay. We would be starting the process completely over.
Okay, thank you.
Administrator Thompson.
Yes, just a couple items. I don't think the intent of Supervisor Brinkman, I don't think the intent is to delay this. I don't think. So I think the spirit of what he brings forward is a wise move by the board. I don't think it would be wise to delay this process. I think we can accomplish what Supervisor Brinkman has suggested, along with others. I think we can accomplish what he is suggesting by approving the resolution today, keep this on track, and we will limit the drawdown to the whatever that number was, 3.7. We will limit our drawdown to that. The way I understand this is that it's for lack of a better word, I think you said it, Supervisor Berkey or Nelson, that it's a line of credit. So the board approves the loan application for $5 million. We will limit our drawdown to the 3.7. I think that there's also, I think the spirit of his motion is to not derail the rest of the capital improvement project, which I really appreciate, Andy. I think that's good. I don't think you are suggesting that we eliminate the rest of the KIP. And if that was the suggestion, I probably would have a little more heartburn, but I didn't hear that. So I think we can accomplish what Supervisor Brinkman is suggesting by approving this resolution. We will limit our drawdown to the 3.7, and we will fund the remainder of the KIP through the jail assessment and through the undesignated fund balance, which I think is what Supervisor Brinkman has suggested. I think it's a good move. But I would not suggest derailing the process at this point, because it will delay it.
Supervisor Brinkman, do you have a response?
I disagree that it would delay it because of the fact that we would certainly have it back by the March meeting. And as admin met this morning before the meeting, they could certainly do that again in March. I guess I'd have to ask Corporate Counsel Cox what we need to do to limit the amount of borrowing on my amendment to $3.70799. You tell me how we should do this. I'm willing to listen to that.
Well, as I understand the rules that the state play by, I agree with Mr., or whoever suggested it, that the amendment, the state won't honor the amended resolution. We have to start all over. Certainly, the committee on or the administration committee can meet, have a special meeting right before the meeting in March and then act upon the new amount. That's an option. Otherwise, if the goal is to reduce the amount borrowed to 3.7 million and change, I know of no other way to do that than to start over with a new application because the state won't honor our amended resolution.
Supervisor Nelson?
I think what we're doing is figuring out a compromise. That's an unknown word in politics nowadays. This is the way I look at it now. Now, I look at, let's keep the process going, but let's have a little bit of self-control and say 3.7 is what we're going to do. Because we're not going to get charged more if we don't take it all. Am I correct with that? So it's compromise with a capital C. I would go for that. And then we kind of keep the feet to the fire of the people dealing with the CIP to make sure that we have priorities. What are priorities? I'm all for the showers. I'm all for everything that we need to do. Honestly, I use them. When I swim out at Perch Lake, things like that, it'd be great to have a shower, but I don't, or a bathroom too. I use that one too. Starting to sound like Donald Trump. But so let's compromise on this. Make sure the process is still going forward. Make sure that we're doing the right thing as far as capital improvement plan. Remember the word plan. We don't have to do everything today, but we got to make sure we have the monies to do that. Let's keep moving this forward. I would take it to where we just keep the process going.
Supervisor Novotny.
I see the positives on both sides of this. I'd like to keep the process going and accomplish this as quickly as we can. But as it was mentioned, in 2 months, we could have a whole different complexion in this room right now. And we don't know what they're thinking. If we go ahead with a $5 million loan and only spend 3.7 million, aren't we providing the next board with a debit card? We may not want to spend more than 3.7 million, but things change. So while I want to see this thing progress as quickly as possible, who knows what's going to happen in the future?
I'll be getting around. Supervisor Schoberg.
Thank you. If I would be persuaded to vote for your amendment, which basically says back to the drawing board, reshuffle the cards, come back with a 3.7 resolution, if I could hear someone in this room give me a 100% guarantee that that will be on this agenda for approval on March 1st. Because if it doesn't get there, and we have a whole new board needing to have a 3/4 majority to even do the 3.7, then we, I think, have failed. All right, because this is what we've been working on all this time on the CIP. We've been working with staff on it, and I think it's a lot easier for the new board to limit the spending than it is for the new board, whatever they are, to say, yeah, we have a 3/4 vote to borrow more money. So we've seen this CIP plan. We've heard from all the various department heads. It's been presented. It's our baby to up or down. So can I hear someone say 100% it's on our agenda on March 1st, and I'll vote for your amendment. Otherwise, I have to stay with the plan because I think it's more important to keep this approved at the 3/4 vote because we have the people in this room that believe in the project.
Supervisor Cook.
Thanks.
In my perspective, a CIP is really long-term planning. We're trying to figure out how to satisfy the long-term needs of the county. We've had a lot of conversation about priorities. As a member of the Public Protection Committee, I recognize Supervisor Brinkman's prioritization of those projects, but I think there are multiple stakeholders in this county that have different priorities. Well, we all think public safety is important, of course, but there are other priorities that I think are a part of the CIP. I know no one is suggesting we aren't going to do these projects, but we have a revenue source or potential borrowing source here that we know exists. We can borrow from this source. The talk of using the fund balance, we're operating as a county in an environment where there's unknowns. We don't know what's going to happen next. And we have an opportunity, I think, with this funding source to borrow the money as the current authorization is before us. And then, according to Bob's statements, we have an opportunity to pay that back without penalty, correct? So further down the year, we get to a point where, those unknowns or the rest of the budget is looking good, the fund balance is stable. That's an opportunity for us to pay back this fund and still save taxpayer money. I don't think anyone at this table wants to charge our taxpayers more interest, but we're talking about long-range planning for the resources and the services of this county, and I think we have an opportunity here to do so without no. It must be me.
Supervisor.
There, anyway, so I can't support this. I can't support this amendment.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Peterson?
Just kind of thinking on the general thoughts here. There's possibility the rates could increase. I'm hearing Bob say, not for sure, but could if we do it differently. The other thing, there's talk of a new board. And the more I think about it, if there is a new board, we have our business here to do today. And no matter what we do, which way we decide, if a new board comes in, they can pretty well change anything. I think we know that. And the other thought is, the voters will have spoken. So why should we try to, tie the hands of a new board? We shouldn't be thinking for them. I support the amendment the way it stands.
Supervisor Brinkman? Come back over here next.
I just want to reiterate this. I'm not cutting any of the funding. What I want to see changed is how we pay for it to best utilize what we currently have and how we can save the taxpayers of this county over $250,000 in interest.
Supervisor Schottner?
I want to make an argument, but I want to get back in line with what we're supposed to be doing. We can't, this amendment needs to die. Just out of procedural practice, this amendment needs to die, and then we need to vote on, the discussion we should be having should be during the main motion, because this amendment cannot be accepted. Even if we approve this amendment and then approve the full thing, we still have to reset the process. So let's stop talking about the amendment, kill it, and then have this discussion during the main process, because that's where this discussion needs to happen. I just want to get us in line with the process first, and then we can have this discussion. Because even if we approve your amendment and then approve the resolution as amended, we still have to start over. So can we please get this discussion into the motion? Because otherwise the state isn't going to honor what we do here. We need to be in the main motion discussion, not during the amendment discussion. So.
Correct. Supervisor Ring, you had something?
I appreciate the spirit of the proposed amendment. But nothing is new today. We've worked on this for a long time. I want to invest in our infrastructure. Our capital improvement process is the way to do that. Now, how we fund it is important. So I'm not going to support the amendment, but I'm going to support the spirit of what Supervisor Brinkman is saying. So I have a couple, this is my thought process. I want to protect that bond rating. If we arbitrarily today set 3.7 million and say 1.7 we're going to take out of that fund because we're committed to doing these projects, what I heard is that might not be perceived well by the rating agencies. I want to protect that. So I think we can set that amount lower, so borrow the full amount, exercise discipline as we should all the time, every meeting, not just today. We have a process. Those needs are really great. They're not only public protection needs. We've invested a lot in infrastructure in this county. We have to protect those too. So I don't want to single it out. But what we can do is maybe not draw on that line of credit and be selective on what we do. What we do take out of it, maybe it's not exactly 1.7, but it's an amount that we exercise our judgment and say, we want to protect that bond rating. What is the best way to fund this? I guess that's my thoughts. Thanks.
I've heard a lot of discussion, and there's been a lot of questions, and I think we've had a lot of discussion now. I think we have an amendment on the floor with a second. I really think it's time to vote on that at this time. What?
I understand what Supervisor Schachner, and that's why I asked Scott.
I don't think that there's anything to prevent you from voting on the motion, but if the resolution gets amended, the resolution from the practical standpoint of completing an application will be tossed by the state.
Right. So everything I'm hearing is if we pass the resolution or the amendment to the resolution, then we have to start over anyway.
I mean,
So
we could try to submit it, but what we've been told is that it will be rejected.
So the resolution came from,
Just clarification.
okay, Supervisor Osmus.
Pat, did I understand you correctly that if we would vote in favor of the resolution as it stands now, that we would cap everything at 3.7 million? That Mr. Brinkman had asked for? Without, so I'm just nervous about sending everything back to the state and trying to get it back. Because we don't, as Mr. Schulberg had asked, are we guaranteed that we'll have something back for our March 1st meeting?
I can't guarantee that, so I would not sit up here and make that guarantee. So we'll do if this resolution fails today to pass, we will do everything we can in our power to get a new application through the state process and back in front of admin and back to the county board. We're not going to give up on this capital improvement funding. This has been a long, drawn-out process and a lot of good discussion, but at the end of the day, we need to fund these very important projects which have been identified and I think generally supported by at least a majority of this board. So it's a matter of how we fund it. Again, I don't think the intent is to delay this. I think our rate is locked in at 3.25%, which is a good rate. There is some risk there with a higher rate. I don't know for sure if there will be a higher rate, but I don't think it's going to be any lower. So again, I would emphasize that I think Supervisor Schachner is right, that I think just by amending this resolution, it probably even further delays the process because then I would suggest that you defeat this if that's the intent. And we'll bring back another resolution and try to get in front of you as soon as we can. The other option is to proceed and pass the resolution as presented, and we will limit our drawdown to 3.7 with the desire of the board and the spirit of the board that we fund the remaining projects with the undesignated fund balance. I think you have two options, defeat or pass.
Supervisor Brinkman.
So a question maybe I'd have for Corp Counsel Cox. Can we defeat this amended motion right now, okay? And then go back and pass the other motion, and then can we have a separate resolution? I mean, do we need a separate resolution to limit the spending to 3.7? How do we do it? Not to put you on the spot.
That's what I do. You could do the following. You could defeat the amendment, pass the resolution, and then bring up through admin a new resolution capping the spending on the up to 3.7 and change.
So,
Yes.
Supervisor Bam.
Very briefly, assuming that we follow that plan, Corp Counsel, do we still realize the interest savings? That I want to be sure about, because that's obviously a key point of Supervisor Brinkman's amendment, as I read it, among others, is to save the taxpayers money. So if we bond and pass the resolution as written for $5 million, we put the spending cap at 3.7, we're still realizing the tax savings. Is that correct?
Yes,
Correct.
to answer your question, I have a question also for Corp Counsel, which I really seldom do I like to put you on the spot like this. Or ask a question that hopefully I don't already know the answer to, but I don't. But
That's good.
could the board accomplish the limited spend down by a motion of the board rather than, I mean, as part of the motion, just make that and vote on that? I mean, can it be a motion of the board, or does it have to go through a whole resolution process?
It doesn't, but the only thing that and I thought about responding that as that would be an option, but I don't want to, I would be reluctant to muck up the works because the state would be reviewing the minutes of this meeting. And I think it would be more advisable to do it at a later date. The resolution would be that the drawdown on the state trust fund loan cannot exceed $3.7 million unless otherwise changed by the board. So I'd recommend that you do it on another date, not today's date. But I don't think there's anything to preclude you. I can't guarantee how the state is going to react to that when they review our minutes.
Supervisor Peavy?
Question, Mr. Cox, getting busy. Is it my understanding, though, if we pass a resolution, we cannot bind the next board? The next board can overrule that resolution and draw the other $1.3 million? Or am I misunderstanding that?
Absolutely. You are absolutely correct.
Of course, the next board could borrow more money.
Well, at this time, we're still back to the same situation.
Yeah, so if we could, let's vote
Supervisor
down the amendment like we all think we're going to do, then maybe let's have an up or down on the resolution, and that up or down is 3/4.
Right, so we have this amendment, motion to amend, and a second, and we've had lots of discussion. And I think at this time, no matter what we do, we either have to have it rescinded or we have to vote on it. So I think at this time, we should vote on the amendment, which is to lower the resolution to 3.2.
I would like to get just some final clarification, and I can read back what I have, if that's okay, Supervisor Brinkman. It was a motion by Supervisor Brinkman, second by Supervisor Kiesler, to amend the resolution to reduce the borrowing to $3,757,099, to include the ESS Phase 2 and Sheriff Day Reporting, Forensic Computers, and Jail Upgrade, and Clerk of Court, and fund the remainder through the fund balance. Was that sufficient?
I would also actually say that we'd also take $50,000 from the jail write-down fund account, bringing the total amount borrowed down to $3,707,099.
50,000 from
The jail write-down fund,
jail write-down fund?
jail assessment fund, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so now does everybody understand what the amendment is? And what we're voting on? Okay, it's time to vote. Four yeses, the rest noes, the amendment fails, so we're back to the original resolution for the 5 million. Now, Supervisor Schottner.
All right, now that we're in the main motion. I actually have a real problem moving forward with completely limiting, because we're all, as it sits right now, if you look at how the numbers are out, are these all the exact final numbers that we will, for every single project?
No, most of these projects have to be bid, so no. These are project estimates.
So these are already numbers that that could go up. and
Could
we
go
will
up, could go
need-
down.
We will need to go into
Could
general
do,
funds.
like it came up at admin, there's one project that there could be less paint, less carpet, you know, so it's a plan, like Supervisor Kara brought up, it's a plan. The numbers are estimates. They could go up, they could go down. There could be less of one project. The ERP is funded at 500,000.
So we could potentially go underneath our 40% by going forward with these, because we're already going down. I do not remember the number you said, 4% of the unassigned funds. So we could actually go below that if we continue with just funding a lot of these projects out of the general fund instead of a few $100,000.
Potentially, could be higher, could be lower.
I would rather see, if we're going to, we are already planning on using the general funds according to what was presented with that 5,151,000. I would rather see small bits taken out of the general fund than giant chunks, and then all of the excess is already going to be added on top of that. That is, I just have a huge issue with that. And I go back to, we've been practicing very diligent discipline with the use of our general fund. We should continue practicing that very diligent discipline. And this is, to me, this is not diligent discipline for our general fund. When we have such a low debt rating in this county anyways. It is a smarter move to maintain our general fund as is, using it in small ways and not going after it and pulling out this much money.
Supervisor Brinkman.
While Moody's does recognize that the county has a low debt load, the shared debt load of the county is a cause for concern for Moody's in their last report to us. And that is a cause for concern. So I'll stand by what I've said 100 times. I'm not against doing the projects. I just don't like the way we're funding it.
Supervisor Schoberg.
Well, I got the answer to my question, and that question was, if you remember, do I hear anybody in this room guaranteeing that this resolution at 3.7 will be before this board on March 1? And the answer was, no one can make that guarantee. So without that guarantee, I have to say, let's go ahead with this $5 million resolution right now. It's not look the gift horse in the mouth any more than we are. It's a very good interest rate. We don't have to use all the money. I will make a motion at the very next administration committee meeting to limit the borrowing to 3.7 million, and I bet Ron Kiesler will endorse that. So we have our controls, Supervisor Peavy. We're not going to borrow more than 3.7, but it's prudent to accept this 3.25 now. Thank you.
Supervisor Kiesler.
Thank you, Chair. You know, it's one of those tough decisions that has to be made in terms of governing our county. And so, you know, compromises have to be made. That's a part of what we do. I think there's more good in the KIP plan and what's looking to be funded than I have concerns with. I am going to reluctantly support this with the assurance that I've heard now from Supervisor Schoberg that he will bring this up in admin. Quite frankly, didn't think it would pass admin, so I was going to, quite frankly, vote against it. But hearing that we will, in fact, have a discussion and a vote at admin about spending caps on this money, and hopefully look at some of the items with a bit more close eye, then at this point I will support the motion and look forward to our next admin meeting. Thanks.
I believe Mr. Minnick had something to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to expand on what Supervisor Schoberg was saying about a motion limiting our spending. We're still going to have to, for all the items that we're funding out of unassigned fund balance, we're going to need a motion for budget amendments for that as well. So I think that all of that could be brought in one action.
Okay. Supervisor Brinkman.
I appreciate Supervisor Schoberg's comment, and I promise I will do all I can to make it to that next admin committee meeting. With that being said, I can support this now.
So
I just have a question for Bob about what you just said.
make it real quick, 'cause I think we're getting.
So you could bring forward the plan, we could do it as a full, like each individual thing at the net. Do you think you could put that together for the next budget, or not budget, admin meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
What we'd be doing is taking what's in the capital improvement plan that you received. We're just changing the funding for it, so.
Okay. We've had a lot of discussion. We've had a motion and a second on the floor on this $5 million resolution. If there's no further discussion.
Agnes needs Peter seconded.
What?
Agnes needs Peter seconded.
I think we're ready to vote on this, so let's vote at this time. Thank you, everyone. It passes. We'll move forward. And we'll be taken back to committee, so thank you for all the input. We'll move up to number 1 on the list now, and it's a resolution authorizing and initiating the SOAR program for St. Croix County using the Community Development Block Grant. Supervisor Babbitt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I need a motion.
Oh, I propose a motion that we pass the resolution as stated.
Okay, do I get a second? Second by Supervisor Schockner. Discussion's open. Let's go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This should be a much simpler process than the one we've just completed with any luck. The SOAR grant, so-called, is, I think, a terrific program that WestCap would like to utilize, and essentially the resolution is authorizing them to use the funds for this program. This is being passed to the full board from HHS, and I think is very straightforward. certainly we can answer questions if there are any. Thank
Okay.
you.
This time we're open for discussion and questions. And I'm not seeing any. So without any questions, we have a motion. Oh, we'll wait for a minute. You have a quick question? We have a couple missing for a minute here. We'll wait till they come back.
I think we have some bladder issues. Some bladder issues. I think people need to take a break.
Yeah. I guess maybe, is everybody, you know, we have, would we like to take a break, or do you want to move on? Okay. We have two people missing. Should we wait till they come back? What?
Vote on this and take a 10-minute break.
Okay. Supervisor Hanson?
As long as we're waiting, Dr. Babbitt, could you explain when the program is recruiting candidates to have help getting their SDI or SDI, how are they doing that outreach?
I'm not sure I can answer that fully, Supervisor Hanson, but I believe that these are individuals that WestCap already has. Essentially, they're clients of WestCap, if my understanding is correct. Vice Chair Osnes may have more information about that, but I think these are individuals that have already been identified as having the need, and so the SOAR program basically helps them get the benefits that we already know they need, essentially. So I think they're already identified individuals within the program.
Supervisor Osnes?
Fred, are you hiding somewhere? Yes, you are hiding. You're behind Mr. Knutson back there. You want to come up and give us some information on the benefits of this program and how it relates to your department?
I'm sorry, Supervisor, I did not hear your question. I heard Fred, that's all.
You're lucky, young man. I'm just wondering if you could give us a benefit, how this program is going to aid probably Marion and other folks in the HHS.
Yes, as part of the prep for the Health and Human Services Board meeting, the individual from WestCap came and met with various folks in Health and Human Services that also may be a referral source. So in addition to consumers that they may already have identified through programs they implement, they have also worked to identify some consumers that Marion Motez, as you mentioned, some individuals that may be working with our community support program. So it would be a way to supplement what we already do. And that outreach has happened, and we would coordinate with them on access to this new program if it's approved by the Board of Supervisors today.
I think that might help Supervisor Hanson out too.
So now we have a motion and a second on the floor. If there's no further discussion, we'll vote on this now. That was all yeses, thank you. And I'll ask the board at this time, would you like a 10-minute break just so everybody get up? Everybody okay? We'll take a 10-minute break. Be back here at 20 minutes to 11. Session out of recess, so we're ready to move on our resolution number 2 for today. And that is a resolution authorizing the sale of excess county land. And I believe this came out of highway, so Supervisor
I'll
Peavy?
move to approve.
I need a second from Supervisor Peterson. And you can explain that a little bit, Bill, if you like, or you want?
Yeah, I'll have Mr. Ramberg come up.
Okay.
If he doesn't disappear. As he's coming up, he has the amazing software. I don't know, he showed us a few of you that shows that's been showing around of the snow forecast, the wind changes, how much it's going to be in Glenwood, and where to send the truck. So the software is just amazing that he's got for that. So
Thank you, and I have Brian Howling, the county surveyor here, who put a lot of this together. First off, yeah, this is really cool software, and this is the opportune time to look at it. I've been monitoring it in the back seat over there. But the wind direction is what's gonna be key. By morning, it's gonna shift from certain types of roads that'll be drifting, and by morning it'll be other roads that are gonna be drifting. So the fellows will be making their rounds. So anyway, I got Brian. Brian? I'll just hand it right off to Brian. He can summarize it probably better than me. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Tim. I don't know if anyone has any questions on this piece of property, but back in 2010, I was directed by Transportation Committee and Corp Council to, actually we were working on a couple other real estate issues up near our Stanton Pit, and they directed me to go contact this adjacent property owner who we had noticed was utilizing a portion of our property for his driveway. And so basically at that time it was deemed in the best interest of the county that we make contact with this property owner, just make him aware that he's using our property for his driveway and see if he had any interest in purchasing the property. It's just basically a 100-foot strip of abandoned railroad right-of-way that is basically not worth a whole lot to the county or the highway department. There were restrictions placed on it by the township that we could never use it for access, blah, blah, blah. So at that time, they asked me to go out and contact the adjoining neighbor. I contacted him. He said he would love to purchase the property, but at that time he was physically or fiscally unable to make an offer. This fall, he contacted me and said he had done some refinancing and would like to make an offer, and sent in this offer to purchase this piece of property from the county.
Any questions? If there are no questions, everybody understands there's a motion and a Supervisor Novotny.
I'm just not clear on what the offer is.
He offered $2,000 for the 2.65 acres of abandoned railroad right-of-way that he is currently using for his driveway.
And in general, where is this property?
Pardon me?
Where is this property?
It is located, I'm not sure if you have a map, but basically it's in the town of Stanton, up near the intersection of County Road T and H. And the county owns basically 109 acres up there for our Stanton Pit.
And what is a Stanton Pit?
It's a gravel pit.
Okay.
A proposed gravel pit and the county utilizes. And basically this piece was attached to the entire parcel that we purchased back in 2000. And so it's basically a remnant parcel that really isn't utilized by we have really no use for it. So like I said, back in 2010, Corp Council and Transportation Committee deemed it more a liability than anything at the time, so they asked if I would go contact and see if the adjoining owner had any interest in purchasing, basically taking it off our hands.
John, I think the drawing is in your packet.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Supervisor Ring.
I have a question about the proceeds. I recall that I believe the county in the past had a resolution where for the sale of excess lands, the proceeds go to reduce debt. Is that true? Is that still the case?
I believe that is part of your policy, debt reduction. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? If there are no other questions, Supervisor PD.
Yeah, just for clarification, I want to do two things. This resolution does state that the fund, oh, didn't turn it on. Thought I did. Just for clarification, the resolution does state that the proceeds will go back into the highways, pits and quarries fund. So if that is a conflict, we would have to amend or whatever we would have to do. Supervisor, or Attorney Cox is saying no.
Yeah,
we're good.
I don't think it's a, so this would, if there is, as Administrator Thompson indicates, a policy on excess proceeds reducing debt, this is a case where the specific language controls the general language, and therefore, if this goes forward, it would go back into the fund as indicated in the resolution.
Go ahead.
Pardon me, and also, as an enterprise fund, this practice respects what an enterprise fund is set up to do. That's operate within its own revenues and expense procedures. The PITS fund is just that. The purchase of this property came from the PITS fund, which was not a levy item. It came out of the PITS fund. Therefore, any revenues into the PITS fund comes out of the PITS fund. So that's just kind of an additional cost center that we use, and then we try to keep those parameters intact.
Supervisor Hanson?
So, thank you, Chair. Tim, is there a state statute that says that these PIT funds are, is it one of those protected categories? Or, my question is going to this. If Supervisor Ring is correct, and we have a policy that states this should go back to debt service, are we going to be, is there a conflict that we need to resolve before we pass this?
And that is where Corp Counsel was speaking to it earlier, and I think he could clarify it even more, but Chapter 83 speaks to that Pits and Quarries Fund, and what the Transportation Committee's responsibilities, and that it operates like a cost center, and it respects that piece, and I believe the spirit of the county board's process is other assets out there that aren't tied to these types of things. But Corp Counsel would have to answer that specifically for us. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. You going to answer that now, or?
Yeah, without looking back in Chapter 83, and I can do that quickly if you want me to, but I don't know that this is a problem because a board cannot bind another board or the same board forever. So this would simply be an exception to that policy if it was in fact within the realm of that policy. But I can look in Chapter 83. It'd take me a few minutes if you want me to, but I don't see a problem here.
Supervisor Stroutner?
It's my understanding that as was practiced in the past, unless it's specified in, like it is in the resolution, then it goes to pay off debt, if it's unspecified. We have allowed resolutions in the past that say specific, for example, the land sale is a great example, the land auction. The proceeds had to be specified where they were going at that sale, otherwise they would have gone straight to paying off debt. So that's just been the practice that we have followed.
Okay. Any other questions, discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second on the floor for the resolution authorizing the sale of excess county land. We'll vote on it this time. That's all yeses. Thank you. We'll move on to number 3, ordinance renaming and amending Chapter 76 vehicle impound ordinance. And Supervisor Brinkman has a motion. Do I have a second? Second from Supervisor Nelson. Discussion. Supervisor Brinkman.
I promise I won't talk as long as I did on the last thing. I promise. You're welcome, Scott. So this is actually kind of a neat thing, I think. This, if any of you have read the Rivertown's newspapers that have been out the last week, discusses this, and it's actually in the Richmond paper, the front page. what started with a conversation between the local VFW, Dave Green in particular, who is here today, and the sheriff at the county fair had a discussion about what happens to our impounded vehicles. And it just so happened that State Senator Harsdorf happened to be there too, and she pushed through Madison legislation allowing the county to donate, or allowing counties to donate things of this nature to the local VFW. What that requires, and what is simply in front of you today, is putting us in compliance with what the new state law is. Very simple, straightforward, and as you heard earlier, our VFW does a lot for our veterans in this county, so this is something I fully support.
Any other discussion, questions? If there aren't any, we'll call for the vote. We have a motion and a second on the floor. So. Again, all yeses. Thank you. We'll move forward to number 4 on the list. A resolution approving labor agreement between St. Croix County and Local 453 of the Wisconsin Professional Police Association Law Enforcement Employees Relations Division for 2016 to 2018. Supervisor Keesler, motion, seconded by Supervisor Brinkman. In discussion? Supervisor Nelson.
Yeah, I would, my fellow supervisor. This is actually a pretty positive way of doing negotiations, because when I made a recommendation, I didn't know how serious that the county administrator and corp counsel was going to take it. But first of all, it probably saved about $70,000 if you did compared to the last time we negotiated a contract. The last time it took 19 months. This time it didn't take that long. That's what you do, is when you work with your employees and keep things in-house, you have positive outcomes. So plus I have information on their prior contract awards, and they're not out of line at all as far as the 2%. Actually, I think they're still playing catch up, but I'm proud of the deputies. I'm proud of the job we did as a county to do a good contract.
Any other discussion? Any other questions? Supervisor Doctor.
I just have a comment because I was on the committee and it was a very, I hate to use the word enjoyable experience, but it was. Everybody was professional and polite, and it was a give and take, and I think we reached a really good contract. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you. Other questions? No other discussion? And we have a motion and a second on the floor, so we'll vote on that now. And there's all yeses there. Thank you again. We'll move on to resolution number 5 we have here, which is a resolution in support of the St. Croix County Day Reporting Center. And I need a motion. Supervisor Nelson, a second by Supervisor Brinkman. Discussion on that? If somebody wanted to lead the discussion, Supervisor Nelson.
This is another important thing that come out of public protection. It's been thought of thoroughly, but this is just now acknowledging that we're going to start the process for this. I welcome you to view the videos on public protection and some of the different discussions we've had about it, and also some of the presentations we had about it. I know it's not widely used throughout the state, but now it's the time for us to get a chance to get in there, and maybe if there's some grant money or other people want to be part of it, that this could help. But this is basically to start the process moving forward.
Supervisor Brinkman.
I believe in your packets that you will also see that we have the full support of the judges are now behind this 100%. This is something that Captain Van Summeren has championed since, when did we have our first conversation about it, Dan? February? He's been working on it about a year. This is a great opportunity for the county. Not only has it been discussed thoroughly in public protection, but also the admin committee did talk about it in their last meeting. I fully support this, and in fact, that's part of my 3.7 million funding is to cover this project. So I ask for your support in this.
Any other discussion? Supervisor Berkey.
I just wanted to point out what was most helpful at the last admin meeting was that the sheriff and his staff provided a tour of the facility so that we would have a better hands-on idea about this. And it also answered some questions for me with respect to some concerns of our public defenders that provide service here in St. Croix County. It appears that there still is certainly the possibility if a public defender chooses to meet with his or her client in an open space conference room versus a locked area with a screen in between, and that is still available. So I was reassured of that. So the tour was most helpful, and I do support this resolution.
Supervisor Nelson.
Yeah, to tie in with what Supervisor Berkey said, I believe this Friday we're doing our Gerald tour. Next Friday, a week from Friday. Every day's Friday to me. But hope my wife's not watching. But anyways, if you have questions or constituents have questions, the best thing you learn about our jail is if you are able to take the tour with the Public Protection Committee and you can see it firsthand. And there's many things that need to be done down there, and being the board of can-do, this is what we're going to do is take care of what we need to do.
Any other discussion? Supervisor Schoberg.
I'm the only attorney, or I should say supervisor, that studied criminal law and criminal procedure, and I would have been remiss had I not reached out to some of the defense bar in this county and hear what they had to say about this whole endeavor. And there's some mixed reviews as to whether the access that's going to be granted to our public defenders is going to be sufficient. Yes, we still have some direct access, but I'm not so sure the plan is really ideal as now designed. So I still want to, and I'm negligent for not having attended your public protection meetings. I will start to go when we have this on the agenda. So I just wanted to say not all is settled with this. Another issue that I had on it is if you looked at the report and the business plan, all these people that are going through this system, and maybe some of them can afford private pay lawyers, but not too many of them. They are asked to pay lots of fees that it's $100 per week, $200 per week for these types of tests. And where does that money go? Some of the money I understood, some of the income could go towards a nonprofit organization administered by the county. Half of it could go, or of some of those fees, but we don't have such a nonprofit organization to handle that. So then the money goes to the sheriff's department, I believe. I just don't think we're doing enough for the people that are having difficult times with drug issues. They're not all full-blown addicts. Some of them, through treatment, they can find a better way. And now we're having them pay all these charges to the county instead of paying perhaps charges to a counselor. And maybe the next tour of duty, if I'm reelected, I'll switch over to public protection, because I just want to have the people that are less fortunate than many of us in this room to be treated with more respect, more dignity, And from my conversations with Defense Counsel and the Public Defender's Office, it's not always easy to do under our present circumstances. So I want to concentrate some more study on that. On the balance, though, I think the improvements made through the day reporting are far outweigh the negatives, so I'll vote in favor of this resolution too, but I'll keep watchdogging it as well. And I again invite any defense counsel to approach me on their points of view as to how their clients, those that are going through the system, are being treated.
Sheriff, you want to come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one point of clarification, Supervisor Solberg. The one fee that you referred to is called a crime prevention board fee. The Public Protection Committee, although that was part of our business plan as a possible revenue source, the Public Protection Committee expressed that they did not want to pursue, as did the CJCC, expressed they did not want to pursue that as a revenue source, so that fee is not leveraged or collected.
Thank you. Supervisor Hanson?
Sheriff, in Section 8 of your business plan, you have 6 areas of revenue, and I'm here. You can even take a peek. It's criminal traffic bonds, misdemeanor bail bonds, felony bonds, drug court, diversion program of probation, parole. All of those have a different charge per week. I'm wondering, are they sequential? In other words, can they stack up? If you're in one category drawing a weekly fee, can you also draw another fee? So instead of $280 here, you're paying $380 because you have a misdemeanor bail bond as well?
No, they should be individualized fees. That would represent the stage that you might be at when you go through the criminal justice system. Let's say when you first get into the system, the courts may say that they want to put you on a bail bond, and there are some conditions with that. And if the judges say that they want to make sure that you're maintaining your sobriety, they want to have you tested, and it could be X number of times a month based on your history and whatever you're charged with. So maybe they get tested once a month, maybe they get tested 4 times a month, 5 times a month, I'm not sure what that is. But then as you work your way through that particular system, then if you go to drug court, you're off bond, and now you get tested through that. Okay. Versus, maybe now you go to probation, and then you get tested based on whatever their rules are. So they shouldn't stack.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Supervisor Keesler.
We're not letting you go. We're turning you every which way but loose. Could you just state kind of for the record, John, what the benefits are of day reporting, just so people, I guess, have a clear understanding, and also how we're out of compliance now. I mean, we're out of compliance in a number of ways, and we also don't have the ability, as I understand it, to like fingerprint under 18, because we can't get them into the jail by law. So,
right. A couple of different things that we could address with this particular project. And I'll mention your last one first, and that is currently, because of our physical facility, we are not allowed to bring the juvenile population into our facility. If you know anything about the way we conduct business, our electronic fingerprinting machine is in the center of the jail. So in essence, the reason that we don't bring juveniles in there and the reason the state doesn't authorize us is they would be exposed to the adult population, which is against the rules to get them to the fingerprinting. This addresses an area outside of the jail proper where we'd have that equipment, and then we could be compliant with taking the fingerprints and the DNA from our juvenile offenders. This whole idea started with us trying to find a better way to monitor those individuals who the courts believed that we as law enforcement were monitoring when they're out on bond. I'll be the first one to admit we have not done a good job of following the court's directives in those cases. The courts always thought that, well, since I ordered that they were going to be monitored, then that's exactly what's happening, when in fact it wasn't happening. The system wasn't working, the system was broke. So this was an effort to try and address that. You know, and especially when you look at that population, I think at the time that this business plan was written, there was something around 2,800 people that were out on bonds that could potentially be involved in the system at one level or another. Again, it may be just coming in to update your address. It may be that simple, or it may be that real extreme case where they're coming in more than once a week to check in and test. So it was again that solution to address the needs for the courts. Now from that began to come these other ideas where probation and parole is saying, boy, we'd like you to take our low risk clients and test them for us, and we'll pay for that for you as a potential revenue source. And that'll allow us to spend more personal time with our high-risk clients. So we're hoping to get a better handle on what, you know, probation parole is hoping to get a better handle on those clients. You know, so again, those ideas just started going from there about how we could serve the various populations. And I don't recall if it was Supervisor Nelson or Supervisor Brinkman had indicated, this is not done widely throughout the state. We're really on the cutting edge here. You'll see day report centers, but most of them are privatized and are therefore for profit. And we're obviously not for profit. We try and offset our revenues when we can to be smart about it, but it certainly is not something that's going to pay for itself on the backs of fees that are charged to the participants. So hopefully it's a win-win. And also for Supervisor Solberg, I agree with you that there are many definitions or fine-tuning to be done yet with some of the processes. We know what they look like, you know, at a higher level, but we're meeting with all of the stakeholders through the CJCC on various committees, whether it be public defenders, the private defense bar, the district attorney's office, the courts, clerk of courts, to look at all of these processes to make sure that we get everybody's opinions and make sure that our final processes that we define are as beneficial as we can be for everyone involved. So thank you for that.
Supervisor Schauner.
I actually look at this program the same way I look at the emergent care facility for the new nursing home, in that it's not groundbreaking when it comes to what it is, but as an extension of government, it actually very much is groundbreaking for at least this region and the state, which usually governments aren't willing to shoulder this responsibility, and that leads to a lot of the regionalization that has actually hurt much of the area. And this is a way for us to actually show and that to be a leader in this and to be responsible to our community. So I wholeheartedly support this. I do understand the need for due diligence in making sure that all of the stakeholders are heard and their issues are addressed. But this is a program that needs to be going forward.
Any other discussion, questions? Now we have a motion and a second on the floor. We'll vote on the resolution for the day reporting center. And that's all yeses. Thank you. We'll move to number 6 on our list, the resolution establishing compensation for elected officials for the years 2017 through 2020. I believe that came out of admin. So get a motion over here from
I move to adopt.
Supervisor Berkey. Okay, do I get a second? Supervisor Nelson. Floor is open for discussion. What do you want to?
I can give a little background.
Okay.
The county board, as you know, needs to set the salaries for the next term before these 3 positions actually run for office next fall. It's a longstanding statutory, it's stated in the statute. So the HR director proposed and provided some information at our last administration committee meeting and Heather's here, she wasn't able to be at the last admin meeting. I did speak with her at length, though, regarding this, and then I also spent some time talking to 2 of the 3 elected positions, and both the county clerk and the treasurer were available at our last administration meeting. So what you have before you is actually starting at a grade 69, which I feel is a fair and reasonable compensation category for this position. And if you look in that pay grade, you'll also see some supervisor positions, some assistant department head positions, and also comparable department heads. So again, I think that with the level of responsibility that we expect, and I think we're fortunate in St. Croix County, our Register of Deeds, we're talking about the Register of Deeds position, the county clerk position, and the clerk of court position. We have individuals that work long and beyond the hours of 40 that perform highly. I don't have any trouble with proposing these particular rates for the next 4 years. And it also, most importantly, I think it is in line with our McGrath study, which we spent a lot of work on, and want to bring fairness certainly to all the positions in the county.
Are there any questions or any more discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second on the floor for the elected officials. So, time to vote on that. That was all yeses too. Thank you. We have number 7, resolution adopting amended purchasing policy. Do I have somebody make a motion on that? Supervisor Schottner, a second?
I'll second it.
Supervisor Austin, second. Floor is open for discussion.
I would just like to pass this to the county administrator. This is over my pay grade.
Sure. What you have before you is a modified purchasing policy. As you recall, we approved the purchasing policy at our last board meeting. Brought us into compliance with the federal government in terms of our purchasing policy. At the time, we knew that there would be some modifications to the policy. We've made those changes that were suggested, and what you have before you is a revised policy based on input from both board and staff. And the highway commissioner, I believe Tim is still here, he'd also provided some further input. As I say this, this policy will probably not in your term, but within the next year, I'm willing to bet that we will have a revised purchasing policy again in front of you. As we wade through this, we will certainly find some things that we want to modify and bring forward through the administration committee and back to the board. But as it stands today, this reflects the input that was provided from our last board meeting from the chairman of the transportation committee, the highway commissioner, and other staff. Thank you.
Supervisor Ring?
I appreciate your comments because I do think this is something that does need our scrutiny. As I look at it and read it, I don't sense that we have a strategy to just see what our costs are overall and how we're reducing those. Another question I have is, what is the board's role? I see no role for us, and I wonder if, I think that should be spelled out a little bit more. I think what is important is that we have a policy and that we follow it. So how do we know if we're following that policy?
Well, your role is to approve the policy, to make the policy. So this is a board-driven process. It comes up through your administration committee and through the oversight provided by the finance director, the county administrator, and the administration committee. We need to stay in compliance. So just like any other board-driven policy. So, your role is to set
And to see
this.
that it's followed.
Yeah. And to see it's followed. Yeah.
So that, yeah, it's your job to see it's followed. So, okay, that's all, thanks.
Any other questions, discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Resolution adopting an amended purchasing policy. It's time to vote on that. And that was all yeses. That kind of concludes our agenda items. We're down to requests for further future agenda items for the Supervisor Ring.
I would like to suggest. Thanks. I'd just like to suggest that in the future, we recognize the volunteers that serve the, or do the free legal clinic, the St. Croix Valley, I believe it's Bar Association. I was here, we got a community development committee a couple of weeks ago, and a gentleman came, he was in the back of the room, and I was introducing myself and say, is there a topic you want to speak on? And he said, well, do I have to tell all these people my issue? And I said, well, what is it you want to talk about? And then he showed me his, he just had all this paperwork regarding a claim, and then it was clear that he wanted to go to the free legal clinic. But I happened to, if you are in the building, there are so many people that go to that. I mean, I think they're doing a great service, and I also would like to recognize Linda Sheritz, who I think has coordinated that for 10 years. She's moved out of New Richmond into Woodbury and still coordinates it. So I think I'm just impressed that they offer that service. I think it's just neat, and I think we should recognize it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Brinkman.
While we're on recognitions, we learned at CJCC last Thursday that there were over 2,100 hours of educational offerings in our jail.
Yep.
And it was like 2,172 hours, I'm going to say, like 2,085 of those are people donating their time. So I'd like the board chairman to recognize them people at some point.
Okay. Supervisor Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. This evening, the Sheriff's Department is having a recognition ceremony, and I went last year. Isn't that tonight?
I think it's been called off.
Oh, well, good job.
Will be rescheduled. They called off because of the weather, yep.
Supervisor.
I'm not sure this is the appropriate place, but I wanted to make an announcement that we lost one of our town board in Troy, Supervisor Sue Warren, a couple of days ago, a heart attack. And that individual, which I know that some of our county staff have worked with, and I'm sorry to say that she has passed on. And secondly, the soup is on, is that today? February 2nd?
I don't know what
here at
you're
the
referring
courthouse?
to.
It's an announcement that ADRC, it's on our, so I'm suggesting that we stay for lunch.
Oh, it's in New Richmond, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any other suggestions for agenda items? Not? Cindy, you want to give your report, please?
Sure. I have no correspondence, but just want to remind you the spring primary election is February 16th. It's a statewide primary, Supreme Court Justice, and then we have local primaries for City of Hudson Mayor, Somerset School District, and in the Village of Hammond trustees. We're using the new voting equipment, so I hope you go out and vote. Thanks.
Thank you, Cindy. Does there anybody have any announcements that they would like to give at this time? Supervisor Peavy.
We spent a lot of time today talking about capital improvement programs. I just wanted the whole board to be aware that, we have a building that was built in 1925 in Hammond. So that process has started of getting what the options and the abilities are in that. So we're many years away, but as you think of a long-term capital improvement program, those buildings in Hammond are aged, and we will be coming before you at some point, and Mr. Thompson and Tim and I will be getting together and talk about how we would do that. But just keep it in your radar that that is another project that will be coming down the pipes, not for this board or the next board, but probably the board after. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Supervisor Peterson?
I'd just like to add to the comments of Mr. Peavy that at one of our highway commission things or meetings last year, I saw a complex down Jefferson County, I believe it was. They just finished up down there. When you think of all the money that goes into our equipment that sits outside all the time, we need to be looking at getting some proper storage for them. So keep that in mind also.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Not hearing any more announcements. I believe our agenda is completed, so we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for a good meeting.